So my topic is actually quite tied to especially your last kind of point there, as well as yours. And it's kind of a philosophical discussion about thinking about how we think about the future. It's more or less, oh, sorry, there we go. So to give us kind of a warm up to get our brains a little bit going, oh God, the singularity is coming. What's going to happen to humanity? What is humanity's future given this gargantuan explosion of intelligence? Well, that's a pretty easy answer, isn't it? It's pretty black and white. We got the good future and we have the bad future, right? And if we look at the good future, we can look in and we see, all right, humanity is good. It still exists. There's certainty. We have a certain future. We feel meaning. Life continues. And it's this nice utopia where everyone's equal and everything's amazing. And on the other end, if we look at the black end, the bad end, we see machines, which are evil. We see the ruin of humanity, dreadful uncertainty, meaninglessness. Life is over. And if life still exists, then it's this chaotic Darwinian world in which the self is greater than the other. And it looks pretty nice when we lay it out like this, right? However, I could just flip it and I could look at it from another perspective. I could say that humanity is evil, that certainty is boring, that meaning is a lie, that life is problematic, it breaks the entropy of the universe, and that I am definitely not equal to others. And on the other hand, machines are good. They are a replacement for humanity, which is evil. The ruin of humanity is deserved. The uncertainty is interesting. Meaninglessness is the truth. Death is an escape from the pains of life, and it is a fact that I am above others. But maybe it's just this duality that is terrible. It is a very inaccurate way of looking at things. But how about a spectrum? I think a spectrum is pretty nice. It's a nice visual metaphor. So let's label the axes. We have the non-human future and the human future, and a little bit in between. So what we'll do is we'll start with the non-human future. We'll take a look at that, and we'll slowly make our way to the human future and see what it looks like. Well, okay, we're in the non-human future. It's black, but why? Why shouldn't humanity have a future? Well, because this is humanity. Humanity has the capacity for great evil, and we inflict suffering upon one another, suffering upon other living beings, and suffering upon the environment at large. We are a destructive force, and we have done horrible evils. Perhaps that's why we shouldn't have a future. But if we do have a future, what purpose would it be for? Is there some underlying meaning that justifies all of this darkness, all of this grittiness, all of this evil? Well, if we ask famous mustachioed German existentialist philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche, and we also ask Albert Camus and kind of Lao Tzu, he's small for a reason in this picture, and we ask them, is there an underlying meaning to existence, to my existence now? They would say intrinsically, for you, there is none. But really, it's up to you. It's up to you to define what your meaning is, because if you boil everything down rationally to its core, there is no inherent meaning. And that's a very sad and heavy thought. It's difficult to bear the idea that you have total agency over your meaning, total agency over your life, and total agency over the future and the direction of the future. It's so heavy a burden to bear that it's easy to take this agency and to give it to something else, something that's not human. Historically, we can understand this as humanity's relationship to spirituality. It's this desire to take what's human, this human agency and this human fate, and to put it into the hands of something else, whether it's God, a higher form of self that transcends you now. It's predicated on this idea of taking this human agency and giving it to the non-human. And this isn't just applicable to to spirituality. We can also understand it as humanity's relationship to our technology and the way that we view the singularity and visions for the future. It's this idea of we don't like this agency that we have. We don't like the idea of meaninglessness, so we transpose this meaning into our creations, and we dream that our creations will take over the burden from us and that humanity won't be necessary in the future because humanity is irrelevant anyway. So why not dump off the responsibility of understanding existence to something that's non-human, that we can concretely say is non-human, whether it's God or our technologies? Why not? But wait, an important question arises. What even is human? It seems like an easy answer. So let's do a previous exercise that we've already done. Okay, so we have the human and the non-human, pretty simple, pretty concrete. And if we zoom in on the boundaries that distinguish them, we get a fractal. It's extremely complex, it's ununderstandable. And I know this is a very complicated visual metaphor, so I'll boil it down a little bit simpler. You can think about it as the attachment between parent and child. The child is distinct from their parents, but whether it's their genetic code or the environment that their parents constructed for them that shapes their being and their existence, there is some kind of intrinsic tie. They are distinct, but they're not entirely separable. We can understand this as the same kind of connection with us and our technology. Within our technologies, which are in a way distinct from us, we embed humanity within them. Because they are our creations, we transpose this human element into them, no matter how much we may deny that that connection exists. We may call it non-human, but it still bears elements of humanity. So when we think about the singularity and the four proposed routes towards the singularity, whether it's a human-machine hybrid or a computer network, an AI that transcends human intelligence, or our biologically engineered descendants, all of them will possess the mark of humanity. The human element will be present within all of them. So in a sense, it's kind of impossible to imagine a non-human future, because what is human? Where do you draw the line of the human element? And so, great. So a network of computers is just as human as me. Humanity is evil and life is meaningless, huh? Well, no. The human element goes as far as you want to project it. You can project the human element into the future, however helps you sleep at night, but the connections to humanity cannot be removed, like from a parent to a child. So when you think of the future, and in your visions of the future, you can humanize it to the extent that you want. Humanity is both good and evil. This is all a very extended metaphor just to show that it's all a matter of perspective. As for meaning, intrinsically for you, there is none. But the key point is that it's entirely up to you. From this point, we are here. We are right in the middle. We're in this gray area, and it's hard to do anything with this kind of perspective of recognizing, okay, it's all a matter of my perspective. It's all subjective. Cool. What do you even do with that? And oftentimes when you interact with philosophical material that really boils down to these kinds of ideas, what do you do with it? It kind of just makes you uncomfortable. And it's hard to envision the future when you have this very all-encompassing headspace. You need momentum and you need direction. So where do you go from here? Well, okay, since we can't go forward into envisioning the human future, let's just completely blindside everything else. And let's imagine what that human future might look like, according to my subjective opinion, and let's move back towards that middle. So why does humanity deserve to have a future? Well, because this is humanity. Humanity has great capacity for good. We share experiences with one another. We feel love. We show compassion to creatures that aren't of our own species. We can put conflict aside for even a brief moment just to share moments together. And we can also create great pieces of art and culture that can uplift the spirits of others. That's why I included a nice picture of the mural that's at the Stollery Hospital, painted by volunteers. So that's humanity, and the human experience is beautiful. So is life still meaningless? Do I have meaning in this lens? If we ask some more spiritualist philosophers, they would still say intrinsically for you, there is none, but only rationally. It doesn't change how you feel about it. And feeling is a very important point here. You can derive so much meaning out of the feelings that you yourself feel, but also the idea of instilling feelings in others. Feeling is very rarely isolated to self, and therefore when we think about a human future, we can think about a future centered around meaningful feelings. How can I uplift the human experience of others? How can I use my subjective understanding of what feels good and what a good life is? And how can I share that with others? And the human experience, going by how you feel, can be constructed. All of it is constructed anyways, so you can construct notions of what it means to raise the human experience. You can build a future that elevates the human experience, and you can construct a future with humanity, with the human experience. And you're always going to have people who feel contrary to your feelings. They will call you names. They will try and tear down your idea of what uplifting the human experience means. They will call you a colonizer. They will call you a mechano-fascist. They'll invent new words just to tear down your idea of the future. So you have to find a way to navigate that, understanding that it is a matter of perspective, but you have to go somewhere with it. So why not take your perspective, your experience, and use it to uplift the experiences of others? But key asterisk, doesn't the singularity threaten the human experience? Doesn't it imply the eradication of humanity? Not really. It's all a matter of perspective again. We can think of scenarios in which the singularity doesn't mean the removal of the human experience as we know it today. An example could be an AI shepherd. If we construct this AI and it takes over hegemony over the world, it might look at us with compassion in the same way that we would look at our pets, for example. Perhaps it'll want to foster the human experience and ensure that we can live fulfilling lives that are detached from the busyness of life that we understand today. As well, there are more abstract understandings of how the human experience can be preserved in the future. If we were, for example, to upload our consciousnesses, then let's say, you could simulate all infinite universes in which you are a conscious entity that is unaware of its omniscience. You could project yourself into those realities and live out those lived experiences completely unaware of anything higher. You will live that human experience authentically, and you can do it infinitely. Isn't that the preservation of the human experience as we know it? In any case, the singularity has great possibility to alter the human experience as we know it, but it would at least be a far more familiar to life as we now know it, compared to, let's say, outright extermination. So it's really up to you. What do you want the human future to be? It's for you to determine, but don't forget the human element, and you define where that is. It's there no matter how hard you try. So going back to that essential question that started this whole philosophical discussion of what even is the human versus non-human future, well, it's a spectrum. It's all of it. It's the whole spectrum. And you label the poles. You settle on the boundaries. You just can't get stuck motionless in the middle. You have to pick whatever area you want of it and act towards the future that you want to build. It's not enough to simply discuss and think about it, because you can end up lost in the middle and going nowhere. So if you want a more human future, then settle on what that means. And it will change over time, but you at least have to be certain about it, and you have to act towards it and move towards it. Oh, and don't mind the singularity. It'll happen whether you like it or not. And here's my image sources.
Yeah, so turn off your mic and yeah, we'll turn these on. Okay. Tasmin, yes. Yeah.
All right. So do you think that in the future, an artificial intelligence will have the same sort of existential crises that a human does?
Because it's very possible. but the thing is, this is a point that I kind of didn't have time to weave into my argument, but we'll have absolutely no way of understanding what its conscious experience is like. That's why we're so attached to the human experience, is because we understand it. You can never understand the experience of another fundamentally, but thinking about this super intelligence that's far beyond us, we can't even fathom what its experience would be like. Maybe it solves the existential question. We'll have no way of knowing. But to us, it's very scary.
Yeah.
I guess this is more about the presentation itself, but where would you say you fall on the spectrum that you outlined?
I definitely fall more towards the light end of the spectrum. And for me, a human future is definitely just a preservation of the human experience as we know it. It'll be completely out of our control, and that's important to recognize. But we can build towards a more human future. Up until that point, we can use our technologies right now to uplift the human experience up until this super intelligence comes about. But really, I'd really like to hope that whatever comes about as a result of the singularity will either be not concerned with us at all, so that we can just go about what we were doing anyways, or that it will help uplift our experience of the human experience as a whole, if that makes sense.
So there must be some value in kind of a rich culture, right? Now, what do we mean by that? So you would imagine it's some traditional things that have been there and some new stuff and all sort of, wonderful ways synthesized together, right? But then what about your ability to control your surroundings, right? You can say, well, yeah, but what if that's absolute, right? You can make your surroundings anything that you want. You can make your emotions anything that you want. Is that like ideal, or is that like a terrible future, right? That like, if everything's possible in terms of your surroundings, how do surroundings and have meaning then? Like, how do you have the feeling of accomplishment or having attained something if you can just dial anything you want up, right? So what about mixing those? I mean, it seems to me you probably wouldn't want one or the other. Like, it's nice to have traditions and old stuff and kind of consistency of that moving towards something new. It's also nice to have brand new things, like feelings that no human has ever felt before. You're now feeling like a whole new emotion or something, right? So to be able to somehow define a life that would contain both things that are different enough from your current reality that it's never been possible to have something that different before, and also things that are a sort of consistent, organic connection with the past to the present and the future, right? And to have it feel satisfying somehow, right? Even though maybe you can control exactly how you feel, right? So yeah, and then if you're the first person to experience this new way of being, I think the biggest question is, why should anybody believe you, right? Because the bias would be tremendous. How did you get picked to be the first person to say you're the first person to try out mind uploading, right? So now you're living in a ceramic slab, right? So, and the rest of the human race is saying, well, how is it, Don't you think that somehow, through some mechanism, the pressure for you to say it's fantastic is just going to be overwhelming, right? The people who chose you, who funded the experience, they're all counting on you saying that it's the greatest thing ever, right? So nobody can believe Sean Liss, right?
What if the experience is so overwhelming though that I'm not even concerned about those people anymore? I'm
Right,
completely
right,
detached
right.
from the physical world because it's so amazing to have this higher experience.
Yeah, yeah. That no, that would maybe be the best answer. That yeah, you had all these prepared speeches and so on. You throw them away. This is so great. I sorry guys, I just want to experience this. You know, I'm not gonna like grade it on a scale of 1 to 100. It's no, it just beyond imagining. The only way for you to know what it's like is follow me here and see, Yeah. So, yeah. Well, the cool thing is, of course, there's a video of my 7-year-old granddaughter, reacting to these things about based on, video games that she's played and so on. Whether she thinks it would be desirable. Because the predicted time at which Ray Kurzweil said that mind uploading would be successful and widespread is such that she would never, as a biological being, be 27 years old. At approximately 26, she would obviously opt to become completely digital in the ceramics lab. So all these great quotations from creative people at the age of 27 just would never happen because she'd be in a whole different reality, So anyway. So, the Faculty of Medicine has, I think, either weekly or monthly, they pick remarkable things to kind of report, right? And the person whose job that is encountered this video of my 7-year-old granddaughter and me talking about mind uploading, and inappropriately thought that, this should be shared across the whole family. It's like some gigantic accomplishment, but just because it's such a unique video. But anyway, we didn't do that, I'm happy to say. It's sort of mixing something that seems like a very watchable video, but is not, some huge accomplishment. Just, surprising. Yeah. So other questions, comments? Well, I think this has been a very good session. Let me say my sort of default would be to simply pick a point in each of your videos and just give you then or provide probably the world with a video that is just you. But I do want you to have some time to sort of think about that, of exactly how it should be edited. And it obviously takes us more time. If you're talking about a kind of editing that I can't easily do myself, then it would take longer, but it's still possible. Yeah, so just think about it. And like some of the best videos in the course that I've passed on to you, when you ask for exemplary presentations, I often give you Vanessa Rogers from, I think, 2012, or maybe, 2013. Yeah. She's now a practicing physician and so on. But that's an edited video, that we had all sorts of, we had enormous technical problems. We just cut all the technical problems out and stitched the rest of it together. Yeah, and done it in a way that you can't really tell and so on. So anyway, all that's possible, but I think people might like just the natural video of what actually happened to you when you gave talk here, right? Rather than sort of one in which everything's fixed. Should we have an abstract with our paper? In the past, there have never been abstracts, but if you can think of a reason that there should be abstracts in the future, boy, we can make it mandatory, because Tasmin in 2021 suggested that we now require everybody to have an abstract of their paper. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. So no, that's not a requirement at all, but yeah, we could think about that as a future advance, you know? So, yeah, any other questions? Okay, so I think that's it for today. And we're only 6 minutes over. Man, I tell you, what a perfect day, eh? Okay, so that's it. Thank you.